On behalf of Cultural Conversations at Johns Hopkins University, SAIS, and our most consistent and wonderful partner, Women's Learning Partnership, I would like to welcome you to this great celebration of a meeting that we will be having today. I'm very proud of the fact that Women's Learning Partnership decided to partner with us for this meeting. We're celebrating three interconnected and at the same time different events. One is to celebrate the 30th anniversary of CEDAW, the Convention to Eliminate All Discrimination Against Women. Another one is the 10th anniversary of Women's Learning Partnership. And the third celebration is to celebrate the launch of the wonderful book, which is on sale out there, Iranian Women's 1 Million Signature campaign, and my friend Mahnaz will be talking about that later. I just wanted to mention of the importance of meetings like this and why I think that we need this ongoing conversation, especially at this point. Women all over the world, and not the least actually in the United States, because as Mahnaz will tell you, United States has not as yet ratified CEDAW. It's one of the very rare countries that has not. So women have always been, and they are more than ever, the canaries in the mine. You want to know how much democracy there is in a country, you look to where the women are. And when we talk about that, about countries where there are repressive laws, we do not just take the laws into consideration. We take into ways that different women, both individuals and groups, have been fighting in order to change the laws. And I think tonight, each person on this panel will be telling you about methods that they have used, not only to gain freedom and rights for women in their own countries, but how through that method to redefine terms such as democracy, rights, and pluralism, because the most important thing is not just the end, but the way we use the means, and the methods that each country has been using in order to bring about change is what is most interesting. So we will be celebrating these victories in each of the countries, and as you look at every participant in here, you do see how the mythology about these general terms about women or women in the Muslim world is immediately broken. Every woman comes from a particular place, particular culture, particular tradition, but the most important thing is the recognition of the universality of our state as humankind, and that is what we will be talking and celebrating today. I have a lot of questions to ask, and I'm dying to ask them once the meeting starts. This is again a great thing about these women. Some of them I know, and some in the audience, like our great friend Mehrangiz Kar, whom I just want to recognize and thank for being here. Every time you talk to them, you're amazed at the degree of humility, despite the fact that they have achieved so much. The fact that they are always prepared to pose themselves as question marks. And that is the important thing, not just question the world, but to question yourself. And that is the only way that we will move forward. With that, I would like to welcome my friend Mahnaz, who will talk a little bit about what CEDAW is all about. And then we will start the panel, and hopefully at the end of the panel, we will have a great discussion and question and answer period with the audience. Thank you and welcome one more time.
Usha always is doing mysterious stuff to mysterious objects, ICT, beyond our comprehension. Welcome, everybody. We have a great group of speakers today, and as Azar, our co-host and friend and fellow struggler for rights, mentioned, we're going to be celebrating tonight these three significant events, and I'll try to mention a little bit about each of them and then go to our other speakers who have come a long way to be with us tonight, and each one of them has a great story to tell. And the great stories that they have to tell about the challenges that they face and the achievements that they have had, I think will go a long way to affect some of the stereotypes that we are used to hearing about women from the Middle East being either victims or individual heroines who suddenly come out from the dark and shed light on one thing or another. They show how collaborative work, slow, consistent, and well-intentioned and well-planned strategies move forward not only individuals but groups and societies. First about CEDAW. 30 years has passed since CEDAW was actually created by the United Nations. As you all know, the preamble to the Charter of the United Nations sets as one of the organization's central goals the reaffirmation of faith in fundamental human rights, in the dignity and worth of the human person, in the rights of men and women, equal rights of men and women. So theoretically, any government that is part of the United Nations family is obliged to work for equality of men and women. However, as we all know, that's easier said than done. And in the ensuing years after the Charter of the United Nations was sat down in print and people joined, many various declarations and conventions were written and put together, on which collaborations were made, and they were put into effect in order to make sure that aspects of this equal rights for everyone would be addressed. But by the time of the first United Nations Conference on Women in Mexico City in 1975, it was made obvious that the equality of men and women is not going to be automatically taken care of with all of these various declarations and commitments. So there was at that conference a commitment made to create a convention that would address elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. And of course, that task was worked upon, and by 1980, in the Copenhagen conference, CEDAW was launched, and 65 countries immediately signed on to it, and it was one of the fastest conventions put into effect ever. And in the ensuing 30 years, some 187 countries have signed on to it, but 4 countries have not, and as Azar mentioned, they are Somalia, Sudan, and the United States, and Iran. I think that the only area on which, in foreign relations, where Iran and the US are united is their opposition to CEDAW. And more or less on the same grounds, I would say, actually. It's unfortunate that both governments use the same fear of disintegration of the family and apocalypse now and so forth. We hope that that is something that will be changing, at least in the case of the United States, soon, because right now we happen to have a condition in the United States which is unprecedented, both an unusual degree of awareness as to the public of the importance of participation of women, involvement of women in everything in huge numbers, and at the same time, a Secretary of State who goes so far as to write an op-ed on trafficking against women. You cannot really necessarily think that that would have been done by another male Secretary of State anytime in the recent past. And we also have congressional support as well as support of the White House. So hopefully we will soon see a ratification of CEDAW. And now the importance of CEDAW is for the women in the developing world, and my colleagues will be speaking to that, is that it provides a framework for actually approaching issues related to women from a universalist point of view. And it gives us solidarity by the fact that so many governments and so many NGOs have come together to support it and to use it as a vehicle and an instrument. So it is a tool that NGOs and women activists use regularly in order to press their governments. The problem with CEDAW, as you well know, is that there are so many countries with reservations. They have ratified it, but with the exception of these particular articles. And those articles, in the case of Muslim majority societies, are at least always Article 2 and 16, others as well, but 2 and 16 particularly, because 2 talks about equality in general and 16 about equality in the family. So these are obstacles that once you get it ratified, the reservations are going to stop you from actually changing any laws that the CEDAW was supposed to help happen. Some groups of countries, NGOs, activists have gathered together in order to push for removing reservations from CEDAW, and my colleague Rabéa Naciri will be addressing that, as well as some of the others. And CEDAW is an instrument that can also bring about a way of addressing issues of law by people who don't have the freedom and the openness to do so. Azar mentioned Mehrangiz. Our friend Mehrangiz, when she was in Iran, was able to carry out a project which actually we had requested her to do, and she was good enough to do it beautifully and quickly, and that was to compare the legal status of women as it was in the Islamic Republic with articles of CEDAW. This gave a way to talk about something that wasn't necessarily focused on the laws of Iran, but a comparative, which would give you a little bit of a leeway. You wouldn't get immediately censored or thrown into jail, although subsequently she was, but not for that particular moment. So it allows you to discuss laws in a supposedly neutral way. So anyway, we're celebrating CEDAW tonight and hoping that by the next time that we meet, we will have further work done on that convention in this country. The second celebration is about WLP. WLP was created in the year 2000. I think the expression is on a wing and a prayer. The wing was the wing of the freedom-fighting women who wanted an organization such as this and wanted to unite together in partnership to move forward. The prayer was the goodwill of a whole lot of people who wanted these women to succeed. And what we decided at that time, and we have been able to work on beyond our imagination in terms of successful movement forward, was that we decided, in short, that although it was very important to have equality in numbers, 50-50, a wonderful goal, it's not enough. If our goal was to change, to have a better world, to have a more peaceful world, to have a world of inclusiveness and tolerance and cooperation, we need to change the structures of leadership, to have a kind of leadership that respects each individual's contribution and actually helps people to recognize their own capabilities and their own innovative spirit and bring to the table what they have to offer and take from the table those decisions that they want to have implemented. And in the following years, I don't want to take too much time to detail it, but the one thing that we can point to with pride, alongside a number of things, is the nature of the partnership itself. The way we work together from different regions, different belief systems, lack of belief, and different languages and cultures. We work together actually walking the talk, and with respect and receptiveness and cooperation. And the other thing is that we have been able to create curriculum adapted to 20 different languages, some of them languages in which there is really no existing material for women's leadership or for advocacy training and so forth. Our most recent one is Qirghiz, and we also have Pidgin English, Hausa, and other languages, aside with languages that are more traditionally available, have traditionally more material available. So we're celebrating that 10 years, a decade of advocacy and great fun, I would say, as well as achievement. The third event that we are celebrating is the publication of the book, which you saw outside, but I'm obliged to hold it up. I've been told that you must show and tell. So here it is for those who haven't seen it. Thank you. Actually, you need a bigger applause for this. The applause is not actually simply to celebrate the publication of this English translation. It is for the courage and stamina and wisdom of the women who actually created this movement, took it step by step, learned from others, taught others, and created sort of a huge demonstration for democracy, for human rights, that shook the bases and the foundation of a very tough, well-instituted system, which is the Islamic Republic of Iran. They started by networking, by setting down what they thought the main areas of abuse were, which were the family laws that allowed for 9 years old as being the minimum age of marriage, polygamy almost unlimited, the right to divorce being the total right of the male, and so on and so forth. They sat down on paper all of these, and then they created a set of strategies. How do we go about working with this? They created a network that was egalitarian, without hierarchical leadership. People would come in voluntarily and work. They also instituted a way of awareness raising and mobilization, which included face-to-face, grassroots contact, door-to-door, not only house to house, but also in beauty salons, in restaurants, in schools, wherever women gathered, and approaching them, showing them what they were proposing for change, getting their agreement and their signature on a petition that was supposed to get 1 million signatures, and if not, just leaving the information with them. The goal being not only 1 million signatures, but creation of 1 million activists. So that strategy was also connected to a strategy of avoiding ideological battles. They called it circumstantial feminism, a feminism that brought together groups of people with different backgrounds, different belief systems, to agree on this one demand: change in discriminatory laws. And so everyone could participate, no matter where they came from. And also, it wasn't a struggle between religion or secularism, between various political parties. It was a struggle that was intended to mobilize and to make aware and to raise consciousness. And so this struggle actually developed, and of course not only was it grassroots face-to-face contacts, but an extraordinary adeptness at the use of ICTs, technology. That's how we got the information outside. That's why we had almost real-time videos and pictures and images of what was happening in the country. And I will just add a couple of other things just about this movement, although you'll have to get the book in order to get all the details. The other thing was to include men as well, men from different areas of activism, students, labor, other interest groups, and so forth. So intersectionality, which is a hope for us, which is something that the women's movement wants to achieve, in effect actually happened. And at least 30% of the people who were active in the movement and who signed on to the petition or took part in the activities were men. Now, the fourth aspect of this movement is actually the idea of nonviolence. Nonviolence not only as a strategy, but as a really deeply held belief system. And I will end by reading you what Noushin Ahmadi Khorasani, who is the co-founder of the movement and the writer of this book, has said. She says, "Each time we had a peaceful gathering, we were greeted by government forces with batons, pepper sprays, and beatings, but never reacted in kind. Instead, we just sat on the ground, covered our faces with our hands, and took the brunt of the batons on our bodies. Even in those difficult moments, moreover, we sang the songs of equality. If the civil and democratic movement of the Iranian people is also to remain peaceful and nonviolent, its power must come not from blood, clenched fists, bulging veins, and zealous revenge-seeking, but rather from life-affirming endurance, persistence, and thoughtfulness. Upon the rise of such values hinges the fate of our movement and our nation." So I hope tonight that they succeed, that they bring that kind of a nonviolent, peaceful, rational, inclusive reality to the Iranian society. And I hope that WLP will continue with these wonderful women and others who are not here with us. And I hope that CEDAW will be a reality for all of us. Thank you very much.
We will now hear from the rest of our panel. Each person will speak for about 10 minutes, and then we will open. There is some sort of objection from above. I try to be very dignified about it. Okay, so our first speaker, shall we start with Lina? Our first wonderful speaker is Lina Abou-Habib, who's from Lebanon, and I would not give a long introduction. Everyone knows our wonderful friends here. She's coordinator for the regional campaign, for the national campaign called My Nationality, a right for me and my family, and executive director of the Collective for Research and Training on Development Action. It's a Lebanese NGO that empowers women to access social, political, economic opportunities. Lina, welcome.
Thank you, Azar. I'm going to speak for 10 minutes, and the way in which my input will flow is around three particular points. First, and building on what Mahnaz has said, I'm going to try to ground CEDAW in the context of the Arab world, what it really means. I'm going to move then after that into what are our pitfalls, the pitfalls that we see when trying to use CEDAW as an instrument for gender equality. And then I will end with an illustration, a case in point. How are we using CEDAW as a partnership in building a movement for change, using particularly the example of the reform of the nationality laws in the Arab world. So what does CEDAW means for us as women, as gender equality activists in the Arab regions? Conceptually, theoretically, the way we see CEDAW, the way we would like to use CEDAW, the way we understand CEDAW is a tool for achieving citizenship rights and for ensuring what we call inclusive citizenship. Now, in the context of the Arab world, citizenship rights and inclusive citizenship necessarily means a certain kind of political leadership, which essentially has three elements. One, what we call responsible leadership, a responsible political leadership, a leadership that is responsible for the implementation of CEDAW, a leadership that is responsible for ensuring that women and men have access to their rights and to their entitlements. Secondly, it's actually an accountable political leadership, a leadership that is accountable to its citizens, both men and women, and where there are mechanisms of accountability, such as, for instance, elections or any other mechanisms. And the third element is a leadership that allows for participation, a leadership that allows both women and men to be able to participate in decision-making, allocation of resources, etc. But most of all, in the way we use citizenship, in the way we use CEDAW as a tool, we are assuming that our states are what we call duty bearers, that they have the responsibility, as I said, to deliver, that they have not just to oppress their people, but actually social entitlement is something that they have to deliver. Rights are something that they have to deliver. And as citizens, we are what we call rights bearers, in a sense that we are entitled to our rights as women, as men, and that we are entitled to equality. So for us as gender activists, as women's rights activists, CEDAW is a very important reference. It's an important framework. It's an important tool for demanding rights, particularly since most of our states have signed it, ratified it, etc. However, there are major pitfalls and there are major problems. First of all, CEDAW as an instrument isn't mandatory. It's optional. With the convention being optional, it's really like saying that women's rights are optional as well. That is one major problem. So as a result, states may or may not sign it. If they sign it, they may or may not implement it. It is totally upon the discretion, the goodwill, the commitment, the responsibility, the accountability of these states, hence the relationship. So, and that is a linkage that we really need to understand very, very well. If they do not sign it, if they sign it and they do not implement it, if they say they want to implement it and they don't put the resources to implement it, at worst, what can happen is a very soft reprimand, something that says, you know, maybe next time you could do better, or, you know, try to arrange at least something. That is the worst thing that can happen if our states, and they often do fail, in implementing CEDAW. So as a result, how do we go about it with these pitfalls? But again, taking into consideration the importance of this tool, I want to take you through an example of how we have and are still using CEDAW as an instrument for organizing and as an instrument for demanding reform. As some of you might be aware, most of the Arab countries, it used to be all of them, had this thing in common whereby nationality laws were pretty clear that men married to non-national women could pass on their nationality to whomever they want, but women could not. Nationality laws, in the way they are conceived and practiced in most of the countries in the Arab region, are incredibly patriarchal. And basically, they consider only men to be citizens and women to be secondary sub-citizens or whatever. So why is nationality an issue? First, the text of the law, the letter of the law, is in a very straightforward way discriminatory. It starts by saying who is a citizen, who is not. It is common amongst most Arab countries. It has implication on violation of all of women's citizenship rights. So it's not even isolated from other rights. In the case of Lebanon, for instance, invariably, every time it presented its official CEDAW report to the CSW Commission in New York, every time the Lebanese state was urged to amend its nationality law. Nothing was ever happened, basically, because, as I had said, this is the worst thing that can happen, a reprimand, and then you can go on with life as usual. Our request, our campaign, our lobbying campaign, had one particular aim in reforming the nationality laws of most of our country. Most of our country says, if I take Lebanon as an example, is considered Lebanese any child born of a Lebanese father. That's it. Our request for reform is to add two words. Is considered Lebanese any child born of a Lebanese father or a Lebanese mother. That is the major demand of this campaign region-wide. Now, how, as a partnership, we have gone about this since I think since 2003, 2002, 2003. Our first step was actually in fact-finding. Fact-finding, not in statistics and numbers and figures. We all know that in the Arab world we're not famous or wonderful for keeping accurate figures or accurate statistics or accurate data. Our facts, the facts that were of interest to us, were in hearing women's voices, in hearing the ways in which women themselves understood this violation of their citizenship right. How do they express this violation of their citizenship? How do they experience it on a daily basis? And this is how we were able to understand how women define citizenship, how the women see themselves as sub-citizens or as secondary citizens. What does it mean for their life chances? What does it mean for their other rights and entitlement, essentially health, education, political participation, etc.? The fact-finding, being able to listen to women's voices, being able to understand how they felt their rights were violated, it was actually what allowed us to identify what the campaign should be about. The next step, actually, building on this fact-finding, was mobilization of people, women and men, on different levels. This was supposed to be, and it still is, a popular campaign, a campaign that is able to mobilize people from different walks of life, people from different backgrounds, but people whose, the circumstantial feminism that Mahnaz was talking about, people who at least together were able to say that we have one collective goal, which is to reform the nationality law. These people were mobilized in different ways. They were either mobilized early on in the fact-finding stage. They were mobilized through ICT. The usage of social media for us was fantastic when we were able to organize parallel events. I'm using the case of Lebanon, but it wasn't just in Lebanon. In Lebanon and with the diaspora, in drawing an amazing number of supporters who actually felt that this is their issue, this is their commitment. They can identify with this problem, even if it doesn't touch them personally, even if they're not in this situation. Drawing media interest was and still is amazing. We're still amazed until now about the sustained media follow-up and media interest about the issue of nationality. The fact that until now, we're still being called upon for interviews, testimonials. It's as if both the media, the public opinion, is now discovering how much these laws are archaic and how much you cannot go on, at least in the letter of the law, in considering women as second-class citizens. Political lobbying is another, I'll be finished in 2 minutes. Political lobbying was the next step for us, and the idea, and probably the most difficult, the idea for us was to talk to all our politicians. And in a situation, in a context where the state doesn't see itself as a duty bearer, there are immense challenges in dialoguing with politicians who do not see that their responsibility is really vis-à-vis those who elected them, or vis-à-vis their community, particularly vis-à-vis women, where their political careers are much more important than rights and entitlements. We had to explain to most of them what CEDAW is to begin with. And the creation, finally, the creation of these international synergies, the regional synergies, and the local synergies. Now, I'm going to conclude with this, just one point. Why is this this form of civic organizing, why has it been useful? In which way has it been different in its modus operandi from other human rights interventions? What we're used to normally in interventions calling for human rights is different forms of alerts, different forms of communication, which are definitely important, which have definitely brought our attention to critical issues of violation of human rights. This initiative is an ongoing, almost 8-9 years old initiative, which is as a result of collective work, which as a result has created and built knowledge, and which has created a movement, mobilization for change. And it is based on an understanding or a perception of what active citizens should be, which is actually women and men demanding themselves a change, a reform in the law. I'm going to stop now, and thank you.
Sorry.
That's fine.
I hate to be the person to implement this rule. And now I would like to introduce to you my wonderful friend. You don't want me to introduce you?
No, I think
you would like Wajeeha to go first?
To complete the same.
Okay, so I will skip Asma for the time being and go to Wajeeha. She's from Bahrain and the founding member and vice president of Bahrain Women's Association and board member of the Arab Thought Forum in Jordan, an Arab network for non-governmental organizations in Cairo. I'm just giving you the few first sentences. There's a lot more to go when one talks about this. What is this?
Well, hello, everybody, and good afternoon. Women usually have, being a woman, this means that you have two battles. One battle to defend human rights as a human being, and the second battle is to defend the human rights defenders, to convince them that women's rights are human rights. So these elements, some of these elements of the battles are listed in front of you, which is nationality right, family law, domestic violence, political participation, and social equality. And all these thorny issues are included in CEDAW Convention. And today, I'm going to focus on two reservations in Bahrain for CEDAW, which is Article 9 regarding nationality law or rights, and Article 16, which is about family law. Suhaila, she is mother now to 4 kids, and none of them has Bahraini nationality just because she is married to German. Hussein, he is 35 years old, and with all his sisters and brothers, he is a father also of 1 kid, and because his mother is married to Saudi Arabian, so none of his sisters and brothers have Bahraini nationalities. And finally, Maryam Sultan, she is married to Yemeni, and her husband left her and she was pregnant. Her son now is 27 years old, and he has no nationality. These are only just some cases of hundreds of cases in Bahrain when the woman chooses to marry to a non-Bahraini, so they have all this problem. So being non-Bahraini means deprivation of the following: free health and education services, housing facilities, political participation, permanent residency, property ownership, employment, and on top of this, the feeling of security and stability. Although our Constitution, Article 18, stipulates that people are equal in human dignity and citizens are equal before the law in public rights and duties, there shall be no discrimination among them on the basis of sex, origin, languages, religions, or creed. This is our Constitution, but this is the same case in most of Arab countries. Therefore, we decided these groups of women were left over, and nobody was talking about them or about their problems until we joined the regional nationality campaign with CRTD in Lebanon in 2004, and under the slogan of nationality is my right and my children's right. And I would like to speak about experience in Bahrain, what the steps we have followed just to push for this campaign is that we're working locally, regionally, and globally. The first step was to meet these women and listen to them, and we find out that all of them, they feel guilty because they have chosen non-Bahraini husbands, because they feel that they made their children victims of not having this nationality. And also, we involved them in having a signature or signing petition to amend the nationality law. And we involved also their children in many drawing activities to express their feeling towards their problem. And they have very wonderful pictures or drawings, as you see. Then we started the second step, the lobbying with the official bodies, with the Shura Council, with the parliaments, and we had many meetings with the committees of the parliament and also the chairperson of the parliament and some parliamentarian blocs just to promote and push for amendment of nationality law in Bahrain. Regionally, we have a round Gulf tour to form a Gulf coalition in Kuwait, Qatar, Oman, United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia. So have to have also partners in the Gulf to also push for this. And this is the first Gulf partners meetings we have. And globally, we started a number of visits and attending some international events like 8th session of Human Rights Council in Geneva, the 42nd CEDAW session in Geneva, and also we were talking about this issue and the urgency, and we urge our government to amend this law. We had a joint workshop with the partners, with the WLP partners at Ukraine in the Fifth World Assembly. And also we met the Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women. We have visits to European Union Commission and Parliament and Council, and also Ministry of Foreign Affairs in The Hague. All of these tours or meetings just to bring up our issue and to urge them to push for in favor of our demand. After that, after joining the campaign, there was a massive media coverage, which you can see many articles, many cases, and many reportages, and we encourage also other journalists and columnists to write about it. This is just a few of it. After that, we have very positive reactions. It was about a royal decree which gives 372 child the nationality, and also there was a chairperson of parliament initiative in favor of amendment the nationality law. The Committee of Women and Children at Shura Council also urged citizenship as an inherent right of the child, and there is some Islamic progressive political society also stand for Bahraini women to grant nationality for her children. And recently, just 2 months ago, there was a royal decree number 35, which stated that the residency fees and health and education fees to be abolished from these children. This is not the end, because still this is partial amendment, and we need radical amendment to change the law to give nationality to these women. I will move quickly now. Do I have time?
You have some time, yes.
Yeah,
About,
okay. The next issue is family law, which regulates many issues like divorce, marriage, custody, alimony, etc. And it also comes under the Article 16 in the CEDAW. Just to give you an idea, that in 2008, there were 780 divorce cases at courts during 7 months only, putting in consideration that in Bahrain we are a very small island and very limited population. Because we don't have family law in Bahrain. So in the absence of personal status law or family law, family matters are regulated by Sharia courts whose judges are appointed by the government. These judges base their judgments on their interpretation of the Islamic Sharia, and this is the problem. So women encounter a lot of hardship in Sharia courts, mainly due to lengthy litigation proceedings and judgments that are mostly biased in favor of men. This has happened in many cases and has resulted in divorced women finding themselves forced to live with their relatives or even on the street, especially if they are unemployed or of older age. There was a personal status committee formulated on 1982, so it has been working for 28 years till now, just to promote for family law, to release this law. They conducted many workshops, awareness workshops to the universities, to the NGOs, to the grassroots, just to give them, aware them for the necessity of releasing this law. There was There was a campaign led by Supreme Council of Women in Bahrain in 2005, and this committee, Family Law Committee, cooperated with Supreme Council to launch and to promote for this family law campaign. But what happened is that there was a huge opposition to this campaign, and as you see from the pictures here, that they are opposing the law, and they have big protests with men, and maybe you will be amazed by the number of women here. It was 150,000 people there in Bahrain. And I will not say all, but many or most of these women, as you see here, they don't know what they are going for. They told them come and the protest, and they joined it, and they don't know that this is against their benefit. What happens is that why they are opposing this family law? Because in Bahrain, we have two sects. We have Shia and we have Sunni. Most of the Shia clerks insist on a constitutional guarantee that the law cannot be changed after it is enacted, so that members of parliament cannot change article in the laws without consulting them. Since clerks have wide authority over Bahraini society, they have managed to freeze the campaign launched by the Supreme Council of Women to support the draft personnel of the status law. So after that, the Family Law Committee started to work again, very hard work, and the meeting, having seminars and workshops again, meeting with Shia's clerks, as you see here in the picture. And finally, they have joint committee with judges. Of course, this is only with Sunni sects. Judges, Sunni clerks, and the women union review draft law proposal. They were meeting for 14 months. just to review and put the draft for this family law until they have the draft and they propose it to the submitted to the Ministry of Justice. And again, recently in July 2008, we have a family law, but unfortunately, it is only what they call blind, or not blind, it's only for the Sunni sects. Still, the Shia's sects have no family law because they are demanding the constitutional guarantees. But we believe that by faith, solidarity, persistence, and teamwork, we are going to make it the complete citizenship rights for women, because as it was said, rights are not given, they are taken. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wajeeha. Now I would like to introduce to you a good friend and colleague, Asma Khader from Jordan. She's the General Coordinator of Sisterhood's Global Institute in Jordan, Secretary General of Jordanian National Commission of Women, and former Minister for Culture. Welcome.
Thank you, Azar. Okay, good evening. I think what we were listening to is giving us the impression how much it is important that women became involved in politics, because all of these decisions, all of these legislations are not moving because we don't have organized political power to push these issues further. And we examine also the weakness of having women in the very high position, leadership positions in the country, like ministries or members of the parliament, when they do not have a number of women who are politically organized to support their demands and their actions and their position to guarantee women's human rights. And as was said, we are celebrating 30 years of having CEDAW now. And Jordan is one of the countries that ratified CEDAW, signed first in 1982, ratified in 1992. It takes 10 years until we ratified. And then we were able to publish it in the official gazette 2007, another 2 decades nearly. And last year, 2008, or this year, beginning of this year, we were able to abolish one of the reservations against Article 15, which is related to right of residency, choosing where you want to be, and right to travel or transportation or traveling. So these developments happened only because there was a movement to demand and to ask, and there is this solidarity campaigns that is organized on national level, regional levels, and also international levels, such as our partnership with WLP. But we think that we should realize CEDAW is only the minimum of women's human rights. It's not the standards that should be unique for everybody. It's only the minimum values and principles and rights that was agreed upon on universal level. So we should see that, for example, violence against women issue was not mentioned in CEDAW. But this minimum was not accepted easily, and still not accepted in the practical life. Officially, legally, our countries, more than 186, 87 countries, are now legally, under the international law, are committed to implement this convention. But still, in reality, it is not implemented yet. Not only the articles that most of our countries have reservations against them, but also those who were accepted by those countries. So we need to examine the gap that still exists between the written commitments and legal commitments and the reality of women's lives. That's why we think it is very important to start with local politics, with politics on the very local level, in municipalities, in civil societies, in villages, in rural areas, and we should focus on working with those women and men, because we think that any development is for the benefit and the interest of both men and women in our communities. Because of that, our experience was the last few years focusing on women in these areas, and the results was quite encouraging. For example, in CEDAW, there is this article that asks governments to take special measures, affirmative actions, to allow women occupying or enjoying their rights in politics and other areas. One of these measures is giving or guarantee specific percentage of seats for women in elected bodies or others. And we did use that in Jordan, so we have 20% seats allocated for women in municipality elections, in the municipality law. And because of this good percentage, the number of women who were able to make it through the quota system and through the competition also was around 25%. Not only the minimum, 20, but also they were able to get another 5 seats in competition. That was because they were run in a good number. They were organizing campaigns, and it was really very empowering to see that women photos, women campaigns, election campaigns were organized in every village, because councils are, municipal councils are everywhere. And in Bedouin areas, in rural areas, there was men who are supporting the campaigns of the women who are running for these elections. And for the first time in a Bedouin area, a woman ran for the presidency of the council, and she won by competition. This was not, we cannot imagine this before it happened really. And I think it was because these women were able to get a chance to serve their communities first. They were involved in local community activism, and they proved that they are committed to the issues and to the demands of their local community, and they were brave enough to go there for the upper levels and demand and ask for these rights for their local communities. And because of that, their communities trusted them. So we started there, and now we are trying to push the situation for political parties, because we usually see democracy as running to the parliamentarian elections. But there are another steps before, how to be involved as a citizen, as a political figure in the community, with the issues that you need to know and you need to practice before being a member of the parliament. And the main space for that is political parties. And now there is a committee for women in political parties to examine how much percentage of women are involved in political parties and what are their positions there, and also what are the programs of these political parties trying to give a clear vision on their position toward women issues. And this is going to help, for example, next elections, to examine how much those parties were able or were ready to push women in their lists for the elections, for example. So we think that we started in this level, and we are pushing every individual, not only candidates, but also voters. Because in Jordan, and I think it's everywhere, women are participating in the elections. They are going and they are using their right for voting. But how they are using this right? Are they really independent voices? Are they giving their voice to whom they are going to serve their issues, their rights, or just to whom their male relatives are asking them to do so, which is usually the case. So we think that this power should be focused on this level, very local level, And in the meantime, we need to see that lobbying for the implementation of CEDAW is not because CEDAW is the way for equality. It is a tool, but we need to focus also that all other human rights conventions that was accepted by our countries are really focusing on the equality and the non-discrimination situation against between people, human beings, for any reason. One of them is for gender issue, male or female. That's why I think we need to use our constitutions, our human rights set of conventions and the principles, and CEDAW, because it is our tool that need to be developed maybe in this occasion, but at least we need to see that what is there already and what was accepted already need to be implemented, and this is what we are collectively trying to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Asma. Now I would like to introduce Rabéa Naciri from Morocco, who's the founding member of Association, I'm mispronouncing, Démocratique des Femmes du Maroc, and which is one of the largest of Moroccan NGOs focused on rights of women, and former executive director of Collectif 95 Maghreb Égalité. So, welcome, Rabéa.
Merci. Je vais parler en français, mais n'ayez pas peur, il y a quelqu'un qui va traduire pour moi. Merci beaucoup. Je ne vais pas être longue, je sais que vous devez être fatigués de toutes ces informations, mais je voudrais juste dire que par rapport à la CEDAW, en 2006 à Rabat, au Maroc, il y avait pratiquement 60 organisations féministes et organisations généralistes des droits de l'homme, ce qui était un événement, ont décidé donc de créer un événement et de créer une coalition, une sorte de grand réseau, avec un seul objectif, mais très ambitieux, c'est de pousser les États arabes de la région à lever les réserves sur la CEDAW. Donc, voilà.
Sorry. In 2006, in Rabat, the capital of Morocco, there were 60 organizations of women's rights and also of human rights who came together and decided to create a coalition and a large network in order to push the Arab governments and the Arab countries to eliminate the reservations on the CEDAW.
Cet événement donc, a permis la création de la coalition avec une vision, une stratégie et une organisation, une sorte de coordination sur l'ensemble des pays arabes, y compris les pays du Golfe.
This coalition was put in place and had a vision and a strategy that brings together countries in the Arab world and in the Gulf region.
Alors, la question de savoir pourquoi la coalition et pourquoi maintenant, pourquoi en 2006
So the question is, why this coalition and why now in 2006?
Parce que, comme a dit Mahnaz et mes amis, parce que tous les États arabes ont ratifié la CEDAW. Pour certains, je me demande pourquoi d'ailleurs. Par exemple, pour l'Arabie saoudite, pour le Qatar, ils ratifient en disant qu'ils n'appliqueront rien de cette convention si ces dispositions vont à l'encontre de la charia. On ne sait même pas ce que ça veut dire. Et généralement, beaucoup de pays arabes émettent une réserve générale sur ce qu'on appelle une réserve générale sur la CEDAW.
Okay. All the Arab countries have ratified the CEDAW. However, we don't know why countries like KSA, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar have said openly that they do not want to implement any of the CEDAW articles if they go against the Sharia law.
Donc, je pense que malgré ces réserves qui sont très importantes, et Mahnaz, Lina, etc. l'ont rappelé, je pense que pour nous, c'est une très bonne opportunité, c'est un cadre, et je vais expliquer pourquoi.
And as my colleague said, these reservations are very important, and they give us the opportunity to do something, and this is why.
Non. Parce que d'abord, nous avons voulu rappeler que nous refusons de rester enfermés dans les frontières de la spécificité culturelle et religieuse.
Because we want to remind everyone that we refuse to remain confined to the specificities of the cultural and ethnic boundaries.
Nous avons aussi voulu rappeler qu'en tant que féministes et en tant que femmes arabes, nous avons en commun, toutes ces femmes arabes, c'est vrai, des discriminations, nous vivons toutes des discriminations, mais nous avons aussi des aspirations à l'égalité et à la dignité, comme toutes les femmes du monde.
And we wanted to remind everyone that as Arab women, we have in common not only the discrimination against us, but also that we do have aspirations and ambitions, and we would like to live in equality.
Et donc nous avons aussi voulu affronter, vous savez, pour les conservateurs de la région et les islamistes, l'islamisme politique dans nos pays, s'il y a quelque chose qu'ils détestent le plus, c'est la CEDAW. Je ne sais pas pourquoi, mais c'est la chose qu'ils détestent plus. Donc nous avons pensé que c'est une bonne opportunité aussi pour marquer notre présence.
The conservatives in our region and the Islamist politics and the Islamists hate CEDAW most and more than anything else.
Et donc nous avons voulu...
And this is why we wanted, I'm sorry, I forget this. And this is why we wanted to make it a point to fight this.
Donc ça, je crois avoir répondu à la première question. Pourquoi la CEDAW? Maintenant, je vais répondre à la deuxième. Je ne vais pas être longue. Pourquoi maintenant? Pourquoi en 2006? Pourquoi créer une coalition en 2006?
Now, I want to explain briefly why we chose to create this coalition in 2006.
La coalition s'appelle Égalité sans réserve.
The coalition's name is Equality Without Reservations.
Donc, parce que je pense que nous avons, à partir de 2005, 2006, etc., nous avons beaucoup capitalisé, beaucoup d'expériences de travail en commun entre plusieurs pays de la région.
Since 2005-2006, we have had the experience of working together with the countries of the region.
Ce que les chefs d'État arabes n'arrivent pas à faire, nous, on arrive à le faire. On arrive à travailler ensemble.
What the Arab leaders of the Arab world cannot do, which is working together, we are succeeding in doing that.
Donc, nous avons appris à travailler d'une façon solidaire sur beaucoup de choses, beaucoup de batailles.
So we have learned to work in solidarity in many fronts and many battles.
Ce dont a parlé Asma, Wajeeha, Lina, Mahnaz avec les femmes iraniennes, etc. Donc nous avons capitalisé beaucoup de choses en matière de travail de tous les jours ensemble.
And this is something that all my colleagues have talked about the campaign also in Iran. So we have this capital of working together. We have experience in this.
Et ça, nous le devons aussi à beaucoup de soutien, et notamment à WLP.
And we have received a lot of support in this regard, and we owe this also to the WLP.
Donc, deuxième raison, pourquoi en 2006? Parce qu'à partir de la décennie 2000, nous avons commencé à avoir quelques succès, à réaliser quelques succès.
And the reason why this coalition saw the light in 2006 is that starting 2000, we started achieving successes.
Quelques succès.
Some success.
Par exemple, les réformes au Maroc, en Algérie, aussi en Jordanie, en Égypte. Bon, c'est des petites réformes, mais nous avons du souffle et donc et nous sommes optimistes.
It's because there were some small reforms achieved in Morocco, Jordan, Algeria, and Egypt, and this is why we had some hope.
Donc, ces réformes, malheureusement, ne sont pas très connues. C'est ce que nous faisons, ce que nous réussissons, parce que généralement, les médias s'intéressent à ce qui ne marche pas et très peu à ce qui marche.
In general, however, and unfortunately, these reforms are not much known or well known because the media, unfortunately, focus on what's not working versus what's working.
Donc, qu'est-ce que a fait la coalition depuis 2006 à aujourd'hui?
So what did the coalition do from 2006 until now?
Je ne vais pas être longue, c'est beaucoup de travail.
I will be brief because it's a lot of work.
Parce que nous sommes sur plusieurs pays, mais
we work in different countries.
Mais nous avons pu créer des débats dans plusieurs pays.
But we were able to create debates in many countries.
Nous n'avons plus peur, n'est-ce pas, de parler de la CEDAW, parce qu'on avait peur de parler de la CEDAW dans nos pays.
we are not afraid anymore of talking about the CEDAW because we were afraid of talking about CEDAW in our countries.
En Jordanie, je crois qu'il y a un grand débat sur la CEDAW actuellement.
In Jordan, there is currently a large debate about the CEDAW.
Dans d'autres pays aussi.
The same applies to other countries.
Au Maroc, il y a eu un grand débat, une grande controverse à propos de la levée des réserves par le Maroc sur la CEDAW, etc., etc.
In Morocco, also there has been a large controversy and debate about removing the reservations about the CEDAW.
Donc nous avons commencé quelque chose qui, je pense que c'est un grand enjeu, c'est une grande ambition, mais je pense que nous sommes à la hauteur. Et nous sommes à la hauteur, pourquoi? Parce que nous avons construit aussi des partenariats qui sont très valorisants.
So we were able to create this partnership, or this this partnership, and this is something that brings together our values.
Et nous avons aussi beaucoup appris à travailler au niveau de chaque pays, auprès de chaque gouvernement, au niveau de la région, auprès de la Ligue des États arabes et au niveau international, auprès des conseils de droits de l'homme. Donc nous savons que nos pays ont peur, ils sont embarrassés. Et notre stratégie, c'est d'essayer de les embarrasser à chaque fois que nous pouvons.
Okay.
Et merci.
So we worked with every country, with every government, and we are working at the level of the Arab League, internationally as well, and we are and the International Council for Human Rights, and we are trying to corner our countries because our countries are weak, and we are trying to embarrass them at every opportunity.
Merci.
Okay, thank you so much for these wonderful discussions. I just can't help it. I want to share one thing with you. As everybody was speaking, when Mahnaz started by saying that you have WLP founded on wings and a prayer, I kept remembering this poem by Emily Dickinson saying that a dim desire for wings diminishes the dress I wear. And I was thinking that all these women sitting here, you know, it's not just the challenge of repressive laws and repressive states, but it is the drudgery of everyday work. As you said, it is not really the kind of hype that we sometimes see. Day by day work of thousands of women to turn that dim light into daylight, into the light of the day. And for that, I think that we're all very, very grateful. And this calls for celebration. Now we can open this to questions and answers from the paradoxes Lina brought about CEDAW and how the states, even if they accept it, are not counted to. Wajeeha is talking about how human rights is linked to women's rights, to Asma bringing to our attention that parliamentarian ways are not the only means to democracy, and Rabéa reminding us that it is not just limitations but also aspirations. So we open to questions. Do we have over there, that wonderful gentleman, Taylor, over there, and has the microphone. There is one in front and one. You have to fight for your rights, most probably, yes. Otherwise.
It's not an entitlement.
Hi, I'd like to thank the panel for coming to speak to us tonight and also for all the important work you've been doing. Thank you very much. As has been mentioned, there's many reservations towards CEDAW, and one which has been made by each of the governments of the states represented tonight, except for Iran, is against Article 9, Paragraph 2, which states that men and women should have equal rights with regards to the nationality of their children. I was wondering, with all the different provisions that are openly flouted by Middle Eastern signifiers, or those Middle Eastern countries which have ratified, what is it about this issue in particular which compelled these states to lodge an official protest? Thank you.
Who would like to?
I can respond, but do you want to take? Okay. If I understand your question correctly, you're asking why are Arab states overly concerned with the issue of nationality and why they have agreed to undermine women's right to nationality. The official discourse, as is the case for any question you ask, is security and sovereignty. Now, if you try as hard as you might to link security and sovereignty with women being able to pass on their nationality, there is no logical or empirical or any other link between the two. But that is the official discourse. Even the countries who have made partial reform, such as, for instance, Egypt or Morocco, and both of them have reformed their laws and have allowed their women citizens to transfer citizenship, but only to their children. They have excluded spouses, again, because of security and sovereignty. The issues of security and sovereignties and the over-obsession with securities of sovereignties. We don't buy this. We think that essentially the main issue is a patriarchal state, a patriarchal mindset of people who run the state. Because at the end of the day, same as some time ago, citizenship in the West, citizenship in the North was based on an idea of a citizen being the white man. For us also, it's exactly the same. The citizen who enjoys full right is actually the man, not the woman. Now, that's on the one hand. What transpires from this, what comes out of it, is that if women were to have equal right for transmitting nationality, this will make them equal citizens. This will make them equal citizens, and that is actually what our states do not want. What maybe we missed pointing out to is that we have, not we, not us, but our states have a serious problem with the whole concept of equality, with actually visualizing what equal citizenship means, with visualizing what inclusive citizenship means. So yes, security and sovereignty are there to be used as an argument for any problem, but the critical, the fundamental, the real reason is actually our state do not consider women as being real citizens or full citizens. And that, we cannot undermine the importance of this, because all other civil laws are also based on inequality, are also based on women being half citizens.
Thank you, Lina. Sure, we have Wajeeha and Mahnaz both want to.
I just wanted to say a quick thing, and that is that, as Lina said, it's the idea of women being equal citizens, because in this particular area, that is nationality, since there was no nation state in the time of the Prophet, when Islam started, there is no reference back to Sharia or to Islamic law or any of that, because there just wasn't any such thing as nationality at that time. But nevertheless, there is such extraordinary opposition to it. So we can see that it's really patriarchal ways of looking at men and women, and not religion. And when religion is being used, it's being used as an excuse and not as really a significant factor in a matter of equality.
I might add something, is that one of the causes in Bahrain that we are a small island and we have limited resources which cannot equip or have space for other nationalities, and also for exploitation. Because of the exploitation of the husbands, when Bahraini woman married to non-Bahraini, then he will exploit this right, and he will, many of non-Bahraini will come to, but this is not true, because he is not having the nationality. While on other hand, which is really funny, is that our government has there is a political naturalization, which they give the nationality to 300,000 of people brought from outside Bahrain, just to change the demography of Bahrain. And where is the limited resources in this case? I cannot elaborate on this
Thank you.
For political reason.
Thank you very much, Wajeeha. This lady.
I'm here from Ms. Magazine. And first of all, I want to thank you for the extraordinary work that all of you do. It's truly inspiring, and thank you so much. And specifically, I'd like to go back to a comment that our colleague from Morocco made when you mention that the media typically focuses on failures, not on successes, and in general, I think you're right. I would, and I assume my fellow members of the press would not like to make this mistake. So I'd like to ask all of you, or those of you who wish to answer, could you be, and this is said very sympathetically, could you give me some more specific examples to share with my readers of specific ways in which CEDAW or the other kind of organizing that you've done, it doesn't have to be CEDAW per se, but can you give us specific examples of victories, even if small ones, that have happened because of the work that you all do collectively? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would you like this?
Par exemple, pour le Maroc, je voudrais dire que nous avons pu changer quand même l'une des dispositions les plus difficiles à changer dans le pays musulman, c'est-à-dire le code de la famille. Ça a pris 20 ans, mais il y a eu quand même des changements. En 2004, je crois que ça a fait le tour du monde parce que c'était quand même un grand changement. Le code de la famille au Maroc. Après, en 2007, il y a eu le changement du code de la nationalité. Donc, la femme marocaine peut donner actuellement sa nationalité d'origine, parce qu'il faut faire la différence entre la nationalité par le mariage ou la nationalité d'origine. La femme marocaine peut donner sa nationalité d'origine à ses enfants, mais elle ne peut pas la donner par le mariage à son mari, comme c'est le cas pour le mari. Dernièrement aussi, il y a eu tout un système de quotas pour les femmes, pour la participation politique au Parlement et au niveau local. Et puis, il y a quelques semaines, nous avons quand même pu mener une bataille qui était formidable. Moi, c'est quelque chose que j'ai beaucoup appris. C'est une bataille avec les femmes rurales, des femmes analphabètes, des femmes pauvres, pour l'accès, pour leur reconnaissance de droit à la terre, comme les hommes. Et nous avons fait quand même, nous avons gagné quelque chose aussi à ce niveau. Donc, je pense que, comme je le dis souvent, s'il y a un mouvement qui fait un petit peu bouger les sociétés arabes, c'est bien le mouvement des femmes. Hein? Je crois que c'est un mouvement qui essaie de faire bouger les choses, parce que les élites, je pense, dans les pays arabes, ont beaucoup de choses à se reprocher. Franchement, les élites politiques, etc., je trouve qu'elles ont failli, elles n'arrivent pas à faire changer les choses, elles n'arrivent pas à avoir un discours cohérent. Les femmes ont beaucoup les femmes ont beaucoup fait progresser les choses.
That kept everybody excited to know what she said.
Vous me rappelez si j'ai oublié quelque chose. One example is in Morocco, we were able to change the family law after it took us 20 years, and this happened in 2004. It required a lot of efforts. And in 2007, the law on nationality also changed, and as a result, the woman in Morocco can give her nationality of origin to her children, but she cannot give her nationality to her husband through marriage. And another thing that was achieved is that we reached a certain quota for women's participation in the parliamentary elections and in local elections. And a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to take part in a battle with rural women. They are fighting for equal property and land rights that are equal, that can be the same as women's rights when it comes to land. And if there is any movement in the Arab world that is making things move or change, it is in the Arab societies, it is the movement of the women. And because the political elites and political leaders haven't been able to do much or to change anything, and because they have no coherent discourse.
Lina and then Asma.
Okay. Just a couple of things in relation to your question. I'm not going to volunteer stories, but I wanted to make a couple of comments. One is I think we need to make a distinction between attributing something to ourselves versus actually being clear on what processes we've contributed to. If we look at it that way, this is where you can see the various social, political, and economic processes that women in this region, in our region, have contributed to, be it on the whole issue of contributing to the debate on trade agreements and economic liberalization, for instance, or law reforms, family law reforms, etc. The other point I wanted to make is how do we define achievement and success? And I think if we want to define achievement and success in terms of a legal change, or particularly in terms of a legal change, it's going to be incredibly depressing if you put it globally. But if we look at if we use this standard, then the 1 million signatures, we can't consider it as a success. But if we look as an indicator, a good story in terms of the ways in which women mobilize and are ready to take on the streets and are ready to face danger or opposition, etc., their ability to organize as actually a success story, then that is something that we can bring forward as a positive change. The number of women who are ready now to mobilize on the street or to speak to the media or to expose their stories is completely different, exponentially larger than what it was a few years ago. I think that process of empowerment is incredibly significant to be communicated, to be understood, rather than, the more material, as important as they are, but I think that is quite a significant thing to report. Thank you.
Asma.
Well, I think that there was a lot of specific achievements. One of them in Jordan, for example, was that specific law, the law to protect for the protection from domestic violence, that was prepared by NGOs, by the women movement, and presented to the government, and it was approved by the parliament 2007. So this is one thing. Also, there was some legal amendments that was part of our demands. We developed together as women organizations what we call it the Women Charter. And the Women Charter contains a list of specific amendments that we were lobbying for. One of them is related to trafficking in women. So we do have now a law for the anti-trafficking law. And also we do have, for the first time, 3-4 years ago, for the first time we were able to have the national shelter for women who are victims of domestic violence, which was part of the women movement lobbying. We do have the municipalities law, where 20% of the seats were allocated or given as a quota for women. In some municipalities in villages, we do have a majority of the members in the council are women. So women are leading these councils. Also, we do have some very important amendments to the labor law, because the labor law in the past one was not giving a protection for specific groups like domestic workers, like workers in agriculture, and like those who are working in the family projects or businesses, most of those are women, and they were not protected. Now the law is giving the protection directly to all these women, these workers, and also it is punishing or preventing the sexual harassment in the workplace. Which was also part of our struggle all the time. Abolishing the reservation on Article 15, Paragraph 4, which was preventing women from free decision on where to stay, residency right, and traveling, was happening only this year, beginning of this year, after our campaigns against it. Of course, there are two other topics which are very important for us. One of them, the honor crimes issue, and there is amendments in the penal code to prevent these crimes from continue happening. And there is also a new development where courts are not giving light sentences, because judges have the right to give a range of punishment, minimum up to a maximum. They start to give the maximum after the campaign. So we can see that only in 3 cases a year or 2 cases a year only, the perpetrators can have a light sentences, while in the past it was for all these kind of crimes. Also, we do have now the Women Complaints Office. It's kind of ombudsman system for women. And this office was started 1 year ago. And more and more women are tackling this, coming to this office, complain for issues or cases related to violence or discrimination. And the good thing is that this office is working with 82 different agencies from non-governmental organizations and also from the governmental agencies. And women can feel now that they can complain and they can get results because of this type of services that are available. Of course, we still have to achieve many other things, but those were really part of this of the Women Charter, and we can say that at least 50% of the demands were achieved, and the rest are on their way. So, thank you.
I will come to the questions. I'm afraid because of the nature of this question, each country will respond, and then I will take a few questions together and everybody can, and then we will respond shortly as much as.
Just very quickly is that, as I mentioned, the law number 35, which is abolition of residency fee and fees and the free health and services education for these children. And also the government has recently abolished the reservation on article number 15. And also after 20 years, we have one sect family law. But I really agree with what Lina has said, is that the real victory or achievement is not changing these things or having this. It's how this issue has been interacted and the people get to know about it more. This is the real achievement, I think.
Thank you, Wajeeha. I just wanted to also mention in case of Iran, because each country has its own specific particular nature. And with Iran, the fight over the past 30 years has been, in fact, to re-implement the laws that had been already in place. Iran had some of the most progressive laws, not just in the region. For those of you who don't remember, we not only had women in the parliament and in the Senate, but we also had 2 women ministers. One minister for higher education, Dr. Parsa, who was murdered by the regime, executed because of warring with God. That was her punishment, warring with God and corruption on earth. The other minister is my good friend and colleague, who was the second minister in the whole wide world to be a minister for women's affairs, Mahnaz Afkhami. And she also was on the blacklist for corruption on earth and warring with God. And Mahnaz and I have all this ongoing conversation about you don't know how religious she is, so for warring with God, it's a very interesting concept in relation to her. But the first thing that the Islamic Republic did was to cancel the law that gave women protection, the family protection law. Before they had a parliament, before they had a new constitution, they repealed the laws in relationship to women, which shows you how important and central women were to the whole idea of this totalitarian regime that has confiscated religion, among other things. So just to make a very long story short, for 30 years, Iranian women, because they had that background, because they had already won so many battles, they could not be moved back into their homes. Shirin Ebadi, the Nobel laureate, was the first woman circuit judge in Iran. They defrocked her and other women judges because they said women are too weak in the mind, so they cannot judge. And
because of the consistent and persistent struggle of Iranian women over the past 30 years, those who have had to retreat have not been women. Ayatollah Khomeini gave a fatwa against women voting in 1963, calling it prostitution. Not only did women vote and, stayed in public offices, but if I'm correct, Mahnaz, they did not allow women to become not just judges, but also ministers, because, you don't have that kind of a judgment. Women are not of that caliber. And because we had these two ministers, and because young people like Noushin Ahmadi for the campaign for equality were now looking to women like Mahnaz and actually taking their program and interviewing her and asking about how they did the kind of jobs that they were doing in the women's organization. And over here, now Mr. Ahmadinejad, while he's executing and putting show trials for so many women, has also told us that he wants to have women ministers. So I think that shows when a movement has roots and when a movement is genuinely rooted both in history and in what you all called aspirations, will make the regime retreat. Today, it is the Iranian regime that has retreated and not the Iranian women. So I had to put in my 2 cents regarding that. Thank you. And now what we will do, we will take 3 or 4 questions so that everybody can just sort of wrap up, responding to each of the questions. I know that you had your hand up for a long time, Mariam Jan, and then I know all the people over here. I will give every person a chance to.
The young man with the beard, I think he had his hand. Janet. The young man with the beard had his hand up.
Okay, I will.
In the beginning.
My question is about CEDAW itself and sort of international advocacy about CEDAW. It seems to me that there's a fundamental problem with how CEDAW is being managed and how the laws within CEDAW have been organized. The Muslim majority countries that are taking reservations tend to take reservations on Article 2, which is the most central article, as you mentioned, and basically calls for equality. Why is it that CEDAW allows reservations to Article 2? And why can't women get together in partnerships like this to say, that's where the problem starts, that at the international UN level, there's a certain deference to the sovereignty of countries when it comes to these issues, like people defer to the man of the house as, well, he knows what's best for that household. It seems like the UN system is deferring to nations and the governments of those nations, and that's where some of this problem is starting.
Thank you for this lady, and let me just. Oh my God. Okay. Then you have to come to the front. Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, is this working? Yes. I have a different sort of question. I'm just curious, to me, as an outsider, the most difficult thing to accept is the extremely restrictive clothing like the niqab and the burqa, things of that nature. And I'm just wondering about what you think of Obama's approach versus Sarkozy's approach. Hands off or kind of taking it on directly?
There was... Okay, there are 3 people in the front row, and then yeah.
Hi. Thank you again for your presentations. Everyone touched on the importance of engaging men in your advocacy, so I was hoping you could maybe give us more details on specific strategies to engage men to support women's movements. Thank you.
Hello, my question is directed towards representatives from Iran, and I'm really interested in the way that you've engaged information communications technology, specifically in the 1 million signatures campaign, and I was wondering how that works, especially in light of the government censorship on the internet.
I'm from Television Washington. My question follows up exactly on this. We got a lot of visual reports after the election from Iran, and what I got from your presentation in the beginning made me think, is the campaign for 1 million signatures responsible for some of these footages directly? Is that what you were implying?
There's one more person from that row. I just have at some point to close this, so we have 4 more people, and we do give gentlemen priority as well, don't worry.
My question follows on really the first one that was asked just now. I'm from the World Bank, and I'd like to know what you feel that the external development community is not doing, that they could be doing. It has been suggested even earlier in a meeting this week that perhaps it's not providing institutional support for the empowerment of women in developing countries. If that's so, I'd really like to hear it and hear what you suggest we should be doing.
Hello? There we go. Following the idea of engagement, could you please discuss your general strategy for engaging the major religious establishments? Have there been any serious discussions with the clerics at places like Al-Azhar University in Cairo or with the Shiite clerics in Qom and Najaf?
Go ahead. We can only take 2 more questions.
My question is in tandem with his, and that is, in what ways are you drawing parallels and working with the people who are doing historical research to show that these ideas of equality, in fact, are completely supported by the understanding that we have of the Prophet ﷺ and of the original community, and that these traditions that have become so oppressive, in fact, are themselves a bid'ah, an invention.
Yes.
My question is similar to the Qom Najaf Azhar question, but also in, just as a segment of the overall. In Bahrain, my question for Wajeeha is, how are you going, what is your strategy to engage the Shia clerics with whom you haven't yet perhaps establish a joint committee, and how are you going, what are your ideas on circumventing their request or their demand for the right and participation, and still getting their engagement and involvement to empower women and put it on the front? And quickly, who are these 300,000 political people? Thank you.
Our last question.
I happen to be a former staff member of Shirley Chisholm, who was one of the very first minority women in the U.S. Congress. And one of the things that we successfully did when we were working on women's legislation is that we involved the daughters, the grandmothers, the aunts. When we were lobbying for legislation like Title IX, or that was an education issue, we basically we got women to talk to their husbands, fathers, nephew, what are you doing to that, because we found it very useful.
This is wonderful. So many questions. And I mean, really, but this conversation is ongoing. Please go on the website of WB. And could I just ask every person to have only 1 minute to respond? Rabéa will have 2 minutes. But it's for your, I mean, I can stay here all night, really. But at most 2 minutes.
Oui, je pense que la question sur les réserves est très logique. Moi aussi, je me suis toujours posé la question, savoir pourquoi est-ce qu'on permet des réserves.
I have always asked myself why they allow reservations on the CEDAW. I myself find this a very logical question.
Et je pense que c'est en fait le droit des traités au niveau international. Pour tous les traités, le droit international, le droit humanitaire permet les réserves, avec la raison est la suivante.
The problem is that international law allows reservations, and the reason is this.
Que les réserves, on donne aux États le temps nécessaire. Les réserves doivent être provisoires pour donner le temps aux États de préparer leurs normes juridiques et leur arsenal juridique interne et les réviser afin de lever les réserves. Donc ça, c'est la raison. Mais bien sûr, la véritable raison est politique. Donc on préfère que les États ratifient, même avec des réserves, aux États qui ne ratifient pas du tout. Donc voilà un petit peu la situation.
Usually, the reservations should be only provisional in order to allow the countries and the government to prepare their judicial arsenal and to modify the law and so on. However, the real reason behind this is political, always.
C'est-à-dire vouloir avoir beaucoup d'États qui ratifient.
And the reason is to have as many countries as possible ratify this.
Thank you very much. Wajeeha?
There's nothing we can do. Well, it's according to the Shia clerks, we have 3 trials with them. We have continuous meetings with them and try to really convince them and to cooperate with us. They were saying that we are not against the law, but we want this constitutional guarantees to be very obvious in the Constitution. And we told them that, okay, we can have this guarantee within the family law. So this one article or on the top of the family law, there will be this guarantee, but they said, no, this can be changed, but we want it to be constitutional. And from the government side, and we have also meetings with the officials, and they said this is impossible to do this because nobody will do this and will put this paragraph in the Constitution. So we are still having these kind of dialogues and trials with them. And regarding Obama's and Sarkozy's approaches, yes, yes, I think that this is, if we are calling for freedom of belief, freedom of religions, and personal freedom, so I am with that anybody can do or wear whatever he likes as long as he is not harming the other people. So this is part of a freedom also. Thank you.
Well, I just want to say that if the possibility of reservations was not there, all our countries will not ratify CEDAW. This is the problem. They will find a very small sentence as a reason why not to joining this convention. So I think it was wise having them. And especially because during the time we were able to change the mentality towards some of these reservations. And I do believe personally that, as many said, we need to prove the roots of the principles of equality, dignity, justice, fairness, freedoms in all human beings' struggles and cultures and civilization, because we do have them. In Islam, we do have them. In other civilizations, we do have them. All the human history, major changes, was searching for these values. So I do think that by the time we will be able to prove that there is no contradictory between Islam and these principles. And because of that, we are continuing our struggling to remove these reservations. And during this process, we are trying to meet with some religious leaders in our communities, in our official departments, to discuss issues with them. But it is very dangerous to leave it for them to decide, because they think they own the reality and the truth alone, and others like us who they cannot say anything. So then the discussion should be based on the principle of each individual person right to have a direct relation with God and not necessarily through them. And the last point is how men and institutions can support women in our communities. I think, first of all, to realize the importance of guarantee women's rights for men and for the community and the development of any country. This is one thing. The other thing, I think that economic empowerment is very important. guarantee women's rights in property, finding jobs and income, being active part of the economic life, and controlling this income is very important. And maybe the World Bank is directly can contribute to this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. You know, the day that Saudi Arabia signed the convention, it was very confusing for me because I was wondering whether it had any meaning anymore. All of a sudden, it became a joke, and I think you're really quite right. I think it begs the question. To go back one step backward, there is a discourse actually, quite a significant discourse, which is basically saying, by using these instruments, okay, which come from institutions, from arenas which are not necessarily committed to equality and social justice. Aren't we actually condoning these institutions, legitimizing them, whereas we know that they are not leading to equality? That is a discourse that is taking place, and I don't think we have an answer for it. The only thing that we know is human rights and women's rights do tend to come last, and all the compromises, whether internationally or within our own government, anytime our own government want to compromise, for instance, or flirt with conservative groups, the first thing that they tend to compromise on are actually women's rights and human rights. So I think it's a combination. I think the question is, how serious are they in all these instruments, whether CEDAW or any other? And that is not a resolved question. I think we need to, you're quite right, we need to have it in the back of our mind. On the issue of engaging with the clergy, with religious institutions and so on, I don't know how many of you were in Beijing in the international conference. Many of us were there. Those of us who were there, I mean, what I want to remind everybody here is that those of us who were there must remember the unholy alliance between the Vatican and Iran and Latin America and so on. So,
Pologne.
Exactly.
Pakistan, Vatican,
Latin America, Saudi Arabia. So the reason why I'm bringing this up, because we keep thinking of conservatism and religions which are essentially hostile to women's rights as being only one-sided. We need to remember that inequality, perceptions, practices, concepts of inequality are actually shared by most religions, institutions, and that what takes precedent in religious institutions, religion as in institutions, not take the spirituality away, but as an institution, what takes precedent are political and economic and power interests, essentially, be it Christian and Muslim. So once this takes precedent, then you can provide any explanation that you want. So that's my contribution. Thank you.
Mahnaz, would you?
I'd like to address the question of ICTs. I think that what happened in the Iranian situation is actually happening all over the world, and especially I've seen it recently with some of the partners in Jordan, where we had a partnership meeting and we had a youth tech festival in which 100 young people from the ages of 15 to 25 participated. It was really an interesting paradigm shift to see these young people, men and women, working together on creating short messages for women, violence against women. They were working together in almost a gender-neutral way. Any preconceptions we have of how men and women in Muslim-majority societies deal together, it doesn't anymore apply to the young, I'm not saying everybody, but I'm saying large numbers of very young people. And the way the men were making these messages, video messages, was not as some people who are men who are supporting the women, but as their own issue. And this is what's happening in Iran as well. It's amazing that the men are approaching equality for women and change in legislation, not as something that happens to women and they should support it, but as their own issue. I believe that the use of ICTs, the kind of connections that people are making in communities that are virtual across the world, the kind of knowledge gathering, information exchange that they are actually engaged in, is the way movements are going to be built in the 21st century, and we're already witnessing it. It's not the ways that we were used to in the 70s and 80s anymore. People will be exchanging and communicating with images and with information across these borders, and they're going to support each other, mobilize through that. And the Iranian situation, I think, was an extraordinary example of that. And the 1 million signatures campaign, in effect, just a quick reference to an experience that Rabéa has had a leading role in. The posters that you see in the back, one of them is the Guide to Equality, which actually documents the way the Maghreb countries, Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco, mobilized for reform of family laws. This was shared both in person with Iranian activists and online on websites in Persian and in English. And it was a direct, actually, connection between what was done in Morocco and what happened in Iran. There is a viral quality to this kind of thing. And 4 years ago, we sat here and launched the guide. And then this happened in Iran in 2005. In 2006, the 1 million signatures campaign began, which led to the protests. And then in February of this year, we were in Malaysia, where an international campaign for reform of family laws was initiated with 50 countries, Muslim-majority countries, and that also came from the 2005 gathering right here at SAIS with Zaina Anbar of Malaysia and Rabéa here and some of the rest of us introducing that effort. So movement building, solidarity building, and change and community mobilization, the way we also saw it in the Obama campaign, is going to be done on the internet. The young people are going to be at the forefront of it, and will catch on from one place to another, and it will have an effect and a powerful effect, I'm certain.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thank you.
Before we leave, may I please be allowed to thank
yes.
our wonderful colleagues who have come such a long way, as well as our staff and colleagues at WLP. Some of them are here. Usha, Rocky, Jennifer. Please stand up, everybody. Naomi, Siobhan, Tyler, the male.
The token male.
And also Layla Austin of Johns Hopkins, who's been wonderful and helped us. And thank you all for spending this evening with us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Mahnaz, can I ask you to sign one copy of this book? I want to give it to a nice woman whom I know who's active in Hezbollah.